On the 24th of October 2016, a British Airways A380 takes off from San Francisco. Its destination? London. On board are 388 passengers and 25 cabin crew members.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On board this flight to London Heathrow.
Not long after the takeoff, the captain calls air traffic control. Here's the recording of their conversation.
What's the nature of the emergency?
We have two events.
Can you say again the emergency for me, please?
What's with fumes, toxic gas type fumes?
We started noticing some strange smells, sweaty socks, wet dog, and then I started feeling burning sensation in my eyes, headache, strange taste in the mouth, want to throw up.
A passenger begins to worry about the crew's strange behaviour.
I asked the cabin service director what was going on. He was trying to deal with the fact that all of his crew were going down at a rapid speed.
Some were fainting, some were totally disoriented. They were saying they're doing things out of context.
One crew member is sat on the floor, covering their head with a blanket. Another eats ravenously. The staff are no longer able to ensure the passengers' safety. The pilot decides to make an emergency landing in Vancouver.
Only paramedics need the aircraft on the gate.
How many passengers are affected by that situation?
Okay, there's 11 crew members that were affected by the situation, and a few passengers. 5.
Upon its arrival, the aircraft is met by emergency vehicles.
We had about 100 emergency services in the dark, lights flashing everywhere, and firemen came onto the plane in full headgear, full oxygen. So we were all terrified that we thought there was something that had poisoned us. They didn't want the poison.
The crew undergo tests in hospital. The passengers are housed in a hotel and will be redirected onto another flight the following day, without receiving any medical care. British Airways will go on to confirm that they inspected the plane without finding the cause of the problem. Official reports claim that no abnormal contamination was detected. However, several crew members would remain on sick leave for weeks, months even, under the instructions to not speak to the press. Why did this incident require such secrecy? Because it's a taboo, a sensitive question in the aviation industry. Is the air we breathe on aeroplanes completely safe? The 11 million passengers that travel by plane each day may have no idea, but the air that we breathe in the cabin comes directly from the engines. At altitudes of over 10,000 meters, we can't breathe the freezing air surrounding the aircraft, which reaches temperatures as low as -55 degrees Celsius. In order for us to breathe normally inside the plane, it is therefore necessary to heat the air and raise its pressure to that of the air we breathe on the ground. Which is why it's drawn from the heart of the reactors, where the air is hot and compressed. Almost all commercial planes use this system. It works, but also has its risks. If a small oil leak occurs inside the motor, potentially toxic chemicals can make their way into the plane's air supply. And this is an invisible process. In aeronautical jargon, this is called a fume event, a leak. Remember, this is the term used by the captain on board the British Airways flight rerouted to Vancouver.
We have fume events.
It is difficult to have reliable statistics on the frequency of fume events because they're not always detected or reported. They are rare enough that passengers are at a low risk of being poisoned, but frequent enough that pilots, as well as air stewards who work on planes every day, can be affected by repeated exposure. Some of them believe that one fume event too many can have lifelong consequences. It's on this runway that Markus Fenzel, a former airline transport pilot, used to take off. He flew passengers all over Europe for 21 years. He was passionate about his job until one day in October 2011, when his career was cut short.
We were flying from Nuremberg to London. We felt a bad smell in the airplane. I went to the rear of the cabin and I smelled it, and it was very intense. And when I returned to the cockpit, I was in front of the cockpit door, speaking to the co-pilot, saying the code for access. And then my knees were so weak that I almost kind of broke down.
Markus Fenzel was no longer able to fly the plane. He passed over the control to his co-pilot.
I felt very, very impaired. I was not able to think about things. I did not answer the questions of the co-pilot because with my brain I could not cover it, because I felt like being drunk. I felt like having drunk one complete bottle of red wine. It is scary.
The plane landed without a problem, but Markus Fenzel never recovered from this flight. Previously bright and athletic, he saw his physical and mental condition worsen considerably. He felt as though he had suddenly aged 40 years.
I was very good. All of a sudden, I was not even able to do some normal things on the computer. I'm under the average of the population with my brain still. I went through hell, which is like, it felt like dying on a living body. So sometimes you would have preferred not to be alive with this body.
Radiological tests revealed brain injuries. The aviation doctor declared him unfit. The captain would never fly a plane again. The company have never recognised the link between the pilot's health and the incident on board, but they continue to pay his salary without requiring him to work in return.
I have stored it somewhere. I don't need it since 6 years. As it's past forever, it will not be possible anymore.
Like Markus Fenzel, the life of Katrin Barry-Schuler took a turn for the worse after an emanation incident. Since 2016, this air hostess at a large German company suffers from chronic fatigue, memory loss and hypersensitivity to chemical products. This 37-year-old mother can't even get close to the pool where she likes to take her son every week. The smell of the chlorine makes her ill.
If we can leave a little bit from, yeah.
Doctors diagnosed her with respiratory and neurological problems, invisible conditions that have turned Katrin Barry-Schuler's life upside down.
You don't see nerve damage, you don't see nerve injury, you don't see the pain, you don't see my diarrhea, you don't see my headaches. This is not life quality. If you're not able to eat what you want, if you're not able to go where you want to, if you cannot play with your son like you used to.
Ja, von Anfang an hat sich alles geändert. Es hat angefangen, zum einen ihr also die Arbeiten war nicht mehr da, dann zu Hause ist es angefangen mit, sie war nicht mehr so konzentrationsfähig. Wenn du ihr was gesagt hast, das hat sie dann vergessen.
Katrin Barry-Schuler has been on sick leave for nearly 2 years. The air hostess has also been forced to give up on the idea of returning to flying.
And this used to be me at work. That's most probably where I'm not going back to. When I went to the aircraft with the uniform on my first flight, I just smelled the wide world, and I didn't want to go back to any regular job. I found my passion. Everybody who loves their job would be sad beyond words if they couldn't do what they love.
Today, the young woman is battling for her condition to be recognised as an occupational illness.
Then just concluded the symptoms are not from there, but nobody answered where my symptoms are coming from. They just tell me, no, it's not from the aircraft. But where is it coming from then? I was healthier than the average public because I was a flight attendant. I'm checked medically 100%. If anything is wrong with my body, I cannot go to work. Why would I fake this?
Katrin would like to return to a normal life, but traditional medicine offers little in the form of a cure. To get better, she has turned to alternative medicine.
So, hallo. Grüß Sie, Frau.
Hallo, Frau Dr. Sonnenschein.
Dr. Sonnenschein is an accredited female doctor who also practices kinesiology.
Feste? Ja, Sie brauchen Colobasis auch. Das sind Probiotika, Lactobacillen. Mal laut Ja sagen.
Ja.
Halten. Laut Nein sagen.
Nein.
Halten. Laut Ja sagen.
Ja.
Halten. Also da muss man gucken, aber was brauchen Sie? Es kann sein, dass Sie am Anfang noch gar nicht so viel brauchen, weil man erst die Sachen für den Darm geben muss.
Okay.
For Katrin, as well as her doctor, science is still very behind when it comes to potential new illnesses related to chemical products.
They need to do more studies, and even if it's recognized, they would have to do more studies, and it will take years until I get a treatment, and maybe after years I'm not here anymore. So I need to do something now. I need to live. I need to feel better. I cannot be sick lying down the entire day. I'm a young woman. I have a son. I'll do anything that helps.
Scientists have given a name to the symptoms described by Katrin and Marcus: AEROTOXIC syndrome. It's not officially recognised, but more and more doctors are persuaded that thousands of cabin crew are suffering from it. In Munich, Dr. Porwitz, a pneumonia specialist, has already seen 60 pilots, stewards and hostesses like Marita.
So, Frau Socher, nehmen Sie Platz.
Dann bitte ans Mundstück dran gehen und normal ein- und ausatmen.
Die Messparameter, die wir vorhin gemessen haben.
Tief ein. Mit Schwung. Tief ein. Mit Schwung. Tief ein. Mit Schwung.
Dr. Porwitz has been seeing this patient with respiratory problems for a year.
Ja, wird es schwieriger und wenn ich bergauf gehe, was ich einfach dann immer... Aber so mein Allgemeinzustand war schwankend in dem letzten Quartal, also dass ich irgendwie immer merke, diese bleierne Müdigkeit, die haftet mir an, dass mir oft so der Antrieb fehlt.
Wenn ich jetzt Ihre Laborwerte sehe, klar würde ich dann nochmal eine Belastungsuntersuchung ergänzen.
Was diese anderen Dinge betrifft, wo ich...
For this air hostess, who also believes she was poisoned on board a plane, the meeting with Dr. Powitz is a real relief.
I was really happy I got recommended Dr. Powitz, and to have somebody taking you serious and your symptoms, your disorder. And first I was shocked that he found something, but I'm really happy to came at his office and to be in good hands. Vielen Dank für
Nicht
heute.
zu danken, gute Besserung weiterhin.
Dankeschön.
Und wir sehen uns demnächst.
Melde ich mich dann wieder. Danke.
Dann machen wir gleich. Außer der Karenz nichts gemacht.
Dr. Powitz has observed similar symptoms amongst all his patients who've been victims of an emanation incident.
So these people are not crazy?
Obviously, they are not crazy. They have not a problem of brain, this is not a feeling, this is not a gut feeling, so this is just an objective pattern that we and others can reproduce.
If Dr. Powitz's patients have been poisoned, which chemical is responsible? What chemical substances can contaminate the air in aeroplanes? We have taken our own measurements on board 2 aircrafts. One of them has already experienced several gas leaks. The other was chosen at random. We collected some dust samples with the help of these wipes provided by an independent laboratory. If the cabin is contaminated by the engine oil, we will find chemical molecules on the wipes. We then analysed our wipes in a laboratory in Strasbourg. The results are clear. Both wipes have evidence of contamination, both on the ones from the plane that previously experienced fume events and the ones from the plane chosen at random.
Nous avons pu mettre en corrélation l'huile de moteur d'avion et la signature laissée par cette huile sur les lingettes. Donc ça signifie qu'il y a eu à un moment donné une contamination de ces surfaces par l'huile de moteur d'avion.
It is this kind of oil, intended to stay inside engines, which contaminated the cabin of the 2 aeroplanes. An oil that neither the passengers nor the cabin crew should inhale because it's toxic and can cause headaches, dizziness, lethargy, nausea and other effects on the central nervous system, as indicated on the label. According to this researcher, one substance in particular is very worrying: tricresyl phosphate.
Les organophosphorés dont font partie le tricrésyl phosphate sont des composés qui sont connus pour leurs propriétés neurotoxiques et donc ils vont modifier le fonctionnement du système nerveux central et périphérique.
How dangerous is this substance for our health? In the UK, the unexplained death of a pilot sparked a national debate.
An inquest has opened into the death of a British Airways pilot. The family of 43-year-old Richard Westgate say he'd complained for years of severe headaches and vision problems, and they believe he may have been poisoned by toxic fumes leaking onto planes.
Richard Westgate was a British Airways captain. At the age of 43, he died suddenly in a hotel room in Amsterdam. He's buried here where he grew up in the English countryside south of London. A few kilometres away from the home of his parents, Judith and Peter Westgate. Their son died 6 years ago, but they remain determined to find out the truth.
This is a collection of some of the newspaper articles and press that was issued after Richard's death and during the subsequent, now 5 years since he died, warning over toxic fumes in plane cabins. That was in 2015, but people still don't seem to listen. This was within the last year that it sort of come to the fore again. The airline industry don't accept the situation, and so it's sort of kept quiet until a new issue comes up and the publicity revives for a little while. He really had a very painful, miserable and bewildering life at the end, because nobody could identify what was the matter.
Yeah.
And he got he had a permanent headache, and he began to lose the sensation in his hands and feet.
The inquiry into the death of Richard Westgate concluded that the pilot died from a medicine overdose. However, the first forensic doctor in charge of the inquiry had written in his preliminary report that the symptoms were consistent with exposure to an organophosphate compound present in the air of the aircraft's cabin. He called on the director of British Airways to take urgent action to prevent future deaths.
We still believe that it was the poisons that killed him, and he only took the painkillers because he was trying to overcome the other problem.
A version of events that British Airways has always refuted.
They don't want to admit anything had caused Richard's death that they had control over.
Why is that?
I think it's probably commercial interests, amongst other things. And probably...
I think it's money.
Yes, and if you take a position, it's probably very difficult to admit you might be wrong and change your mind. We cannot bring him back alive, but I think we've got to do what we can in his memory and for the sake of others who are suffering.
Has British Airways sought to understand what this pilot was suffering from? The company has refused our request of an interview and has responded to our questions by mail. Their response can be summarised in a sentence. We would not operate an aircraft if we believed it posed a health or safety risk to our customers or crew. It is a case for the justice system to decide. Judith and Peter Westgate are engaged in proceedings against British Airways. In the United Kingdom, more than 150 cabin crew members have denounced their employer with the aid of their union. The largest in the aviation industry, Unite the Union, represents more than 30,000 cabin crew members. 2 years ago, Unite launched a campaign on its website entirely dedicated to air contamination in airplane cabins.
But this bit here where it says in the event of an engine overtake or breakthrough type symptoms, and then these are the more serious symptoms. So you go into this page and it tells members very clearly how it happens. So air can be compressed, it comes through the engine, and if there's a break in one of the engine seals, then engine oil gets into the cabin crew air.
Oh, so you have a dedicated helpline?
A dedicated helpline, yeah.
Where is it located?
It goes directly to Thompson's offices in Newcastle.
Okay.
It's definitely time to go to court. We've got 157 members who are pursuing claims with us.
Who needs to be condemned?
Ultimately, it's for the employers to make sure that the workplace is safe for our members. So it's the employers who would be punished.
Okay.
Howard.
David, how's you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Take a seat.
Thank you.
Take a seat. Right, David, thank you for coming in. So
Howard Beckett is in constant contact with the union lawyer. They've worked together on the case for 2 years.
What we need to prove in the courts of England and Wales is that the employer, so the airline, has breached its duty of care towards its employees. So that is that they have exposed them to something that is harmful and that they know or should have known is harmful. And has it caused their health? Well, I would challenge any of the airline chief executives to go and put your head in an engine and smell the fumes coming off it. And would you not be scared that you're actually going to damage your health by doing that?
A legal battle that crew members have also launched in France, Germany, the Netherlands, Canada and Australia. These lawsuits could be disastrous for the airline's image and finances, but will they take place? We found that in the past, lawsuits have been dropped in exchange for financial compensation. make their voices heard against rich and powerful opponents, those campaigning for the recognition of AEROTOXIC syndrome have taken drastic steps. This Hollywood-worthy English thriller aimed to raise public awareness about the problem of air contamination.
I prefer mayo on mine, thanks. Find out what shit's in the stuff.
Released in cinemas in 2015, it was entirely financed by airline workers' unions, passengers, and patients. Here's its director, Tristan Lorraine, a former British Airways pilot who also believes to be suffering from AEROTOXIC syndrome.
When you're debriefed by the accident investigators.
He founded a pressure group which is becoming increasingly powerful, and in September 2017 he hosted an international conference in London on aircraft cabin air. Katrin, the German air stewardess, has made the trip, as well as many others, scientists and professionals in the aviation industry. But for Tristan Lorraine, the main industry leaders are missing.
If the industry, like Airbus and companies like that, want to really understand the issue, they should be here. They should be part of the debate. You can't live in denial. 11 million people fly every day, and they need to go places, but they need to go places safely.
In the aviation industry, air contamination is quite a troubling issue. Of all the companies we contacted, only 2 responded: the French company, Air France, and the British low-cost airline, EasyJet. Both of their medical advisors gave us the same speech, practically word for word.
Okay.
Wording based on 3 main points, which we have carefully dissected. The company's first argument: the air in planes is healthy.
Je tiens vraiment à être rassurant quand même sur que l'air que nous respirons dans un avion est sûrement moins pollué que l'air qu'on respire en voiture ou en train ou en transport en commun pour se rendre à l'aéroport.
We feel that there is not a problem with the cabin air. The cabin air quality is actually better than you would have on the ground in many positions in homes, and they mention kindergartens.
The 2 doctors' argument is based on a study carried out by the EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency. Published in March 2017 after years of pressure from victims' associations, it measured air quality in planes. It confirms that aircraft were indeed contaminated by engine oil, but at levels considered harmless to people's health. No single detected contamination reached critical or unusual concentrations for indoor environments. But for many independent scientists, the study is missing a vital element. The planes weren't tested during a fumes accident.
On peut regretter de cette étude qu'elle ne présente pas de données expérimentales concernant un événement fumé, un fume event à l'intérieur d'une cabine d'avion, parce qu'aujourd'hui on ne connaît pas les niveaux d'exposition aux organophosphorés lors d'un épisode de fumée.
Gaps that the EASA itself has now recognized. As a result, the agency has launched a new study, and its conclusions are expected within the next 3 years. The airline's second argument: occurrences of toxic fumes in the cabin are extremely rare.
Les pollutions accidentelles, enfin les événements, ce que nous on appelle feu, fumée, odeur, qui peuvent apparaître dans un avion, peuvent être liés à des problèmes très épisodiques. On estime à peu près à un événement pour 100 000 où on retrouve une cause, 100 000 heures de vol où on retrouve une cause. Donc ce sont des événements extrêmement rares.
1 accident per 100,000 hours of flying. According to our calculations, that means 1 smoke occurrence a month. We gained access to Air France's confidential database, which lists all in-flight incidents over 1 year, and we found that pilots actually reported a lot more, 1 per week. This figure was confirmed by the company, which operates 7,000 flights a week on average. Let's use this flight from Biarritz to Paris in September 2017 as an example. Emergency landing because of a fume event. The captain keeps the autopilot on so the aircraft can land automatically if the pilots are unable to do it. Another example was on this flight from Washington to Paris a month later. Cabin air contamination by engine oil. Oxygen masks on. In January 2017, the boarding of a flight from Panama to Paris was interrupted because of poisoning by toxic fumes, air conditioning. According to the leading union for Air France pilots, these incidents would actually be much more common, but they regularly go unreported.
Le problème a tellement été caché, tu au sein de la compagnie, qu'il y a finalement assez peu de gens qui sont conscients de la dangerosité des émanations d'odeurs qu'on peut subir en cabine lorsqu'elles arrivent. Et on pense que le nombre de rapports est sous-estimé, c'est une évidence.
And the third argument put forward by the companies, when a fumes incident does take place on a plane, it's taken care of by maintenance. This time, at EasyJet, we met the head of maintenance. He said that each time an incident like this occurs, it is taken very seriously.
Well, every time we have an event, our crew are encouraged to fill in a smell in cabin report. We ground and investigate the problem.
We obtained several internal documents from EasyJet, and we found that several fume occurrences happened repeatedly on the same aircraft. Such as this aircraft, registered as GEZWI. On the 24th of September 2017, the aircraft made 6 flights in Europe. That day, the crew reported the first smoke event. The next day, a second incident takes place on the same aircraft. Maintenance detects a leak from the auxiliary generator, which is turned off. On the 26th of September, the aircraft makes another 6 flights. A third smoke event is reported. The crew suffer from nausea and vertigo. On the 27th of September, the plane is finally unloaded at EasyJet's main maintenance base in Luton. How can they explain that, despite these repeated incidents, the plane had flown with passengers on board 3 days in a row? Had maintenance failed?
From time to time, and I can't argue with your data, we have events that take a while for us to find what the root cause is.
You see, it flies with passengers all the time.
So I'm not clear as to whether you're suggesting that we didn't perform the procedure correctly or fully.
I guess because it happens again.
Well, all I can assume is every time we have to perform the procedure, we perform it fully and correctly. Safety is our #1 priority as an airline, so I can absolutely clearly state that there is no pressure to fly any aircraft before we have performed a full investigation.
Perfect. Okay, this filter will be useful.
According to this official, there's no pressure from the company to resume the plane's flights after a fume incident. An EasyJet pilot, who wishes to remain anonymous, accuses his company of putting profit above everything else.
Eux, ils sont prêts à tout pour redécoller l'avion. Hein. Tout ce qui les intéresse, c'est faire décoller l'avion. Par tous les moyens possibles. Et puis, chez EasyJet, la flotte est à flux tendu. Il n'y a pas suffisamment d'avions de réserve. Et le moindre grain de sable, donc d'un avion arrêté de vol, a un effet boule de neige excessivement important qui engendre des coûts astronomiques. La santé de l'équipage et des passagers, ça n'a pas l'air d'être leur première priorité. Ça a l'air d'être simplement de faire le vol suivant et de ne pas annuler le vol suivant. Le souci, c'est qu'il y a des passagers dans l'avion et des équipages. C'est pas des drones, quoi. On transporte pas des moutons, quoi. Pendant ce temps-là, on expose les navigants et les passagers qui sont dans ces avions à une éventuelle nouvelle émanation. On sait qu'il y a un potentiel problème et on prend le risque de nouveau les exposer. On pourrait faire au moins un vol de test, à vide, avec juste 2 pilotes, mais pas 180 passagers derrière.
Despite their statement on the quality of air in the cabin, companies have finally acknowledged that there might be a problem by putting the blame on someone else.
Il faut aussi prendre en compte que ce sont les constructeurs, c'est les fabricants, c'est Airbus, c'est Boeing, c'est les fabricants de réacteurs dont on est dépendant. Nous, on ne peut pas modifier un avion, c'est le constructeur qui nous impose les modifications. Nous, on fait que, on est le conducteur de la voiture, on transporte des passagers et nous, on fait que suivre les règles des constructeurs.
So the root of the problem comes from the aircraft's design. Manufacturers all adopted the same air sampling system in the 50s.
À Toulouse, première sortie de l'avion commercial français à réaction Caravelle. Les 2 réacteurs sur ce prototype sont placés à l'arrière du fuselage et non dans les ailes comme sur les comètes anglaises.
The first commercial jet planes, like the Caravelle, marked a technological revolution in the history of civil aviation. Instead of pressurising the cabin with a large electric compressor, as was the case in old generation planes, engineers came up with the idea of adjusting the air in the engines. Graham Davidson is an engineer specialised in aeroplane motors. He has worked for various big names in the European aviation industry, and for him, the main advantage of this innovation was a financial one.
So it became a more cost-effective airplane to fly, and it was all on weight, so they were able to carry more fuel and go further because the aeroplane was lighter. Every aeroplane ever since has gone with a bleed system.
An American lawyer is fighting against this system. In Northwest America, Seattle has long been home to the headquarters of Boeing, the American aviation giant. "42-year-old Alyssa Brodkowitz is a lawyer who specialises in aviation.
I think that the Boeing factories start soon.
Her battle against Boeing has also become a family affair.
I believe it's known as the largest square footage factory, indoor factory in the world. These are airplanes that go all over the world. They literally carry all of the world's citizens, every country. Boeing is certainly part of the history of Seattle and its growth. My first child was just a baby, but when we drive by the Boeing factory, we all shake our hands, we shake our fists at Boeing and we say, bad air, because we want them to change how they make their airplanes, and we don't want them to put bad air in the airplanes.
In 2009, Alyssa Brodkowitz and her client, an American air hostess, made headlines by going after Boeing for a design flaw.
Is there a design flaw in Boeing planes that can make passengers and crew dangerously ill?
That is what an American Airlines flight attendant claims. She has gotten very sick, and she's not alone.
The air hostess and her lawyer reached a settlement with the American giant, but the amount remains confidential. Boeing had avoided a trial, but Alyssa Brodkowitz says they'd found a weakness in the manufacturer's stronghold.
If you don't have people suing, there isn't going to be any change. You have to have pilots and flight attendants, and you have to have lawyers. You have to have people who are willing to take the risk and bring the lawsuit, because we're the watchdogs of industry.
Boeing avoided the trial, but in the meantime, Alisa Brodkowitz got access to thousands of confidential documents. She discovered that in 1953, the manufacturer had clearly identified a problem with contaminated air, proven by this internal report, which highlights that the possible toxic effect of the contamination is still unknown. Other internal documents confirm this concern, but the problem persists, to the point where in 2007, 54 years after the first report was published, an executive at Boeing sounds the alarm in this email. Bottom line is, I think we're looking for a tombstone before anyone with any horsepower is going to take interest.
No one's going to do anything until there's a tombstone, which means that no one will do anything until there's a death. We're all breathing this, everyone who flies on a commercial aircraft. And even the most senior engineers on the environmental control system, the air system at Boeing, they don't know what's in the air. It confirmed that the problem exists, and it confirmed that no one was doing anything about it. That's scary, yeah.
Faced with repeated alerts from its employees, what has Boeing done? Has the manufacturer warned its clients, the airlines, of a problem it had identified right from the start? What changes have they made to these planes? Boeing has responded to these questions with a brief email. Cabin air is safe. Our air system is in accordance with FAA'S requirements. Alisa Brodkowitz has not given up. She's filed a second complaint against Boeing and is preparing to face a new opponent.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alisa.
Hi. Thank you for participating in this webinar. We have attorneys from France, an attorney from Spain, and pilots and flight attendants participating.
Backed by European lawyers, Alisa Brodkowitz now wants to sue AIRBUS. This would be a first in France when it comes to air contamination. Talking to her today are pilots, air stewards and hostesses who are looking for someone they can hold accountable for their suffering.
Okay.
Like this employee of an American company who's flown on Airbus planes.
I've worked for them for 15 years, and I've smelled this stuff on and off, but I had no idea what was going on or what it was. But I had never gotten sick before, like I was back in June. And now I'm nauseous every morning. I can't even be around any chemicals. I spend days just on the toilet throwing up all the time. I have headaches every day. I'm only 38. It's been a challenge for everything.
I'm so sorry for everything you're going through. It is, frankly, it's just a nightmare to get on a plane healthy and to get off sick.
These are the types of documents that will be asked for. So initially stay off of, or just...
There is no guarantee that we will win a case. That's just most important to be known, that these are challenging cases. It's cutting edge science. We are up against some of the biggest, best funded companies in the world.
The American lawyer wants to convince the French judges that planes manufactured by Airbus, like those by Boeing, have a design flaw. That's what she believes, and she doesn't mince her words.
It's time to hold Airbus accountable. Airbus makes a plane that makes people sick for their whole lives, destroys lives, and it's time to change that.
We would have liked to have Airbus respond to these serious accusations, but the manufacturer refused our interview request and responded to us by email. They deny causing any air contamination from the motor, and just like Boeing, they remind us that Airbus aircraft are designed in compliance with all airworthiness regulations to provide the highest level of cabin air quality. The manufacturers hide behind regulations. But do regulations go far enough? For pilots and air hostess unions, the EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency, doesn't protect the passengers and crew enough.
Il y a probablement un lien de complicité entre le législateur, finalement, et les grands constructeurs d'avions. On a un grand constructeur d'avions en France, on le connaît tous, et donc le législateur hésite toujours à prendre des dispositions qui contraignent une entreprise aussi importante qu'AIRBUS. Si les constructeurs avaient eu la contrainte d'avoir un air parfaitement sain en cabine, ils auraient choisi une autre solution et ils l'auraient trouvée. C'est uniquement une question de contrainte.
However, Airbus engineers and their subcontractors are already working on this solution, just not officially. In June 2017, the European manufacturer tested a new pressurization and climatization system. On this plane, an Airbus A320, the air is no longer extracted through the engines, but instead along the fuselage at the base of the wings. But this is just a prototype. Its American competitor Boeing is one step ahead, launching the 787 Dreamliner in 2011, the first and only aircraft in service to no longer use the engines for cabin air. According to Airbus and Boeing, these changes had nothing to do with fume incidents. The manufacturers affirm that they just want to improve the air quality for the passengers' comfort. Today, there are just 644 of these Dreamliners in circulation out of 26,000 planes in total. And for this former aeronautic engineer, these new aircraft only deal with part of the problem.
If you're going out to buy a new aircraft and you buy a Dreamliner and you're doing long haul, it's only designed for long haul. You can't fly a Dreamliner short haul. It doesn't make financial sense. So we're sitting with 6,000 aircraft. Probably the fleet's even bigger than that. Has to be addressed. And nobody's doing anything about it.
So what are the proposed solutions for the thousands of planes in circulation? During our interview, the EasyJet maintenance director told us he wanted to equip his fleet with chemical detectors and filters, just like Air France.
We're working to improve those filtration systems. That's to stop things entering the cabin.
Okay, when would they be installed in your airplanes?
We would like to be in a position towards the end of 2019 to start to put some of these filters on our aircraft. Okay. But that's still in development.
Will these filters be effective, and how long will it take to develop them? None of the manufacturers that have proposed these solutions accepted an invite to speak to us. Installing this new equipment will cost millions, and it'll still be decades before all of the planes in the world are completely replaced. In the meantime, hundreds of thousands of flight crew and passengers across the world will continue to be inadvertently exposed to dangerous substances.